comes the devil. Oh, here comes the devil. Oh, here comes the devil.
Oh, the devil with the devil, says I.
Shh, look out for the devil. Look out for the devil. Look out for the devil.
Oh, the devil with the devil, says I. You're so afraid of old man Satan, now why don't you stop your hesitating? You're gonna be a long time dead, so the devil with the devil, says I. You're always giving me the dickens, telling me that life's no easy pickings. But just as long as I have fun, why, the devil with the devil, says I. You can have your social teas and bingo for your fun, but the things I like to do, you stop me one by one. Now even if you make me stronger, that ain't gonna make me live no longer. So even if I go to shh, the devil with the devil, says I.
Look out for the devil, look out for the devil.
Oh, the devil with the devil, says I.
Here comes the devil. Oh, here comes the devil. Oh, here comes the devil.
Oh, the devil with the devil, says I.
Shh, look out for the devil. Look out for the devil. Look out for the devil.
Oh, the devil with the devil, says I. You're so afraid of old man Satan, now why don't you stop your hesitating? You're gonna be a long time dead, so the devil with the devil, says I. You're always giving me the dickens, telling me that life's no easy pickings. But just as long as I have fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Sorry for that slight delay at the beginning, but we were trying to sort out our transmission on the Rumble, which I'm going to check out if it's actually happening, because we know that a lot of people are following us usually on Rumble, and there seem to have been some problem, but I think we are now going to be on Rumble live in a few seconds. Guys, this is what happens when you are live. A lot of people prefer to do everything recorded. We like the feeling of being with you guys. So thank you so much for tuning in on Facebook, on YouTube, on X. We should also be on BitChute, and hopefully also on Rumble, as I am checking out now. Let me see if we are finally on. It still doesn't give me the confirmation that we are on. I don't really know why. It says that we are live here. but I'm gonna just make a quick check, see if we are or not, because this is very important for our viewers that are following us on Rumble. We have some problem today. I don't know, but it seems that we are on. I can see that we are on Rumble, so thank you so much for being so patient with us. Christy, who are our sponsors today? Oh, okay. Guys, we don't really have any sponsors this month, so I don't know if we're going to keep on with our Saturday broadcast regularly. We might just appear and disappear while I'm also preparing for a new book, because it seems like we simply don't have enough interest in this broadcast. What do you think, Christy?
Ditto.
Okay, well, then if that's the case, like I said, we might take a pause for a few weeks until we find, of course, more interest. You can help us out with GoFundMe. You can also help us out with Cash App. You can find the Cash App handle at leozagami.com, together with my latest articles. This week we have been discussing the Pope's blessing of a block of ice. I know we have a whole article up at leozagami.com talking about this subject, but today we're going to be also discussing Jehovah's Witness. I mean, we had the last week the Mormons. It was an episode that literally triggered some very powerful forces, as the guy, the president of the Mormons, died literally while we were on the air. So the Church of Jesus of Latter-day Saints, the LDS Church, had this. It's like their Pope, died on Saturday, and then the day after we had an awful attack by somebody who was definitely very disturbed mentally, who attacked this church, set it on fire by investing it with his pickup truck, and then started shooting through this. This is, of course, something that we never wanted to happen. I mean, we, of course, criticize this sects, because sometimes they are sects, they are sectarian in nature, but everybody's free to belong to whatever cult they wish. That's their own problem. With God, it's not our problem. And like we said last week, the Mormons are also very nice people. So we pray for their
Even
family.
their comments were polite.
Yes.
On the thing.
Yes. Some people reprimanded us because we made use of occult theocracy and their citation of the ritual, which was published on a Rosicrucian magazine, and they said that it wasn't in line with the ritual which is currently taking place in the Mormon Church. But I mean, of course, we cited whatever source we had, and probably, like I said, there was a source from the end of the 19th century, so they might have evolved in something different in the meantime. In regards to the Jehovah's Witnesses, we are more or less in that same historical period. There is, though, certain differences that need to be discussed. First of all, the Jehovah's Witnesses have, of course, also, they don't believe in the Trinity in the same way as Christians do, ordinary Christians. They were actually not called Jehovah's Witnesses when they were founded by their founder, Russell. Charles Taze Russell never called them Jehovah's Witnesses. They were actually a Bible study movement, which kind of broke up from Adventism, because Russell was a Adventist pastor originally, and then it was the guy who it was all within this restorationism movement. Now, a lot of people came, Mormons, and said, Leo, it's not that the Mormons copied the rituals of Freemasonry, it's that the Freemasons copied the rituals of primitive Christianity, and we did the same. Well, guys, that's not the way it works here, because in Volume 9 of my Confessions, I explain how the Illuminati and the Freemasons in the 18th and 19th century were very eager to promote the Gnostic heresies and forms of Christianity that were not really in line with what was agreed at the Council of Nicaea. Now, the Jehovah's Witnesses seem to be amongst the same. But there is also, I find a very interesting thing, Christy, in the Jehovah's Witnesses, that their creator had published 6 books called Studies in Scripture. And at his death, 2 years after his death, a 7th book that he allegedly wrote, but in reality wasn't wrote by him, but by his successor, was published. However, within 10 years, these books were abandoned altogether by the Jehovah's Witnesses, who took on this name only in 1931. So it was the successor of Russell who abandoned the studies in scriptures that were from the very founder of this movement, to then embrace something different. They even abandoned the cross because they then didn't want to believe that Jesus died on the cross, but he died on the stake. Yeah. And so they also abandoned the use of the cross, which instead we find in that monument, which you have seen on our thumbnail from the beginning of the show, which is close to the tomb of Russell. However, this monument has also been removed in 2021, because a lot of people were going there and they were realizing the connection with Freemasonry, because this monument, which I'm going to show you now, is clearly inspired by Freemasonry. This is the symbol of the York Rite of Freemasonry. So it's like very clear where the inspiration is coming for Russell's, and by the way, of course, he didn't build this monument next to his tombstone. But let's go and check it out. What do you want to do, Christy?
No, I want to tell you that the camera is in a weird position.
Ah, in a weird position? Why?
Yeah, it's usually you have it over there.
Oh.
And it's like over here, and so it's just weird.
No, it's not. It's actually the same position we usually have it.
It is?
Yeah, absolutely. I always make sure I have it in the same position.
Okay.
So don't worry. It's not mirroring. I mean, I'm pretty sure of that, Christy. Yeah. Okay. We are not. Sorry, if you want, we can mirror it like this.
No, I don't want to mirror it.
Okay. Okay. So let's go back instead to what we have just seen. This pyramid, of course, is in line with the fixation that Russell had with pyramids. I want to cite now from a book from David V. Barrett's Sex, Cults, and Alternative Religions. This is a citation which Christy can read, of course, from here, because one thing that, there is 2 things that the Jehovah's Witnesses are very well known for.
Is this the Watchtower?
No, the Watchtower, of course, is the first development of the study group, and the publications of the Watchtower, by the way, later on will be defined also by the use of that symbol, which you have just seen on top of the pyramid, which has now been removed to celebrate the life and the teachings of Russell. We have seen that pyramid with a Masonic symbol, which in reality identifies the York Rite of Freemasonry, because if we go and see the symbol of the York Rite like we're going to do now, you're going to see that it's a clear reference to the York Rite. The Knights Templars of Freemasonry, there is of course two rites which are practiced here in the United States. One is the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, the other one is the York Rite. Though one thing also has to be said, there is no evidence, on the contrary of Joseph Smith, that Russell was a Freemason. He may instead have actually stolen the symbols of Freemasonry, as well as some of the teachings, for his own new interpretation of Christianity. But this is the symbol, as you can see, that you find on top of the pyramid, and it's the symbol of that represents the Knights Templar in the York Rite of Freemasonry. So, just to make that very clear. Now, instead, the one thing that they are known for, the Jehovah's Witnesses, by the way, they were called Jehovah's Witnesses only after 1931. Only after they abandoned the original teachings of Russell, including the seventh book, which, by the way, we will be discussing in a minute, because this book contains the very secrets of the foundation of the Jehovah's Witnesses. This book that has obviously Masonic reference. I mean, when you see a book with a cover like this, it seems pretty obvious, no? Yeah. This is the cover. The Finished Mystery was Russell, during his life, the last years of his life, he had announced that he wanted to write a book commentary about a seventh volume, because they have 7 messengers in the Jehovah's Witnesses that they respect. We're going to go now and analyze that too. But I wanted to also analyze the fact that, we all know the Jehovah's Witnesses made a lot of predictions about the end of the world. They did it over and over again. The last big prediction was made for 1975. The other ones that we had in recent years were not really officially scheduled, let's say, because after getting so many wrong, including in his lifetime, Russell himself, which kind of really picked up on what the millennialists were doing. So, for the origin of prophecy, here, Christy.
Whoa.
No, this is okay.
Okay. Wow. For the origins of prophecy, Russell looked not just to the Bible, but also to the measurements of the Great Pyramid at Giza. Though these were altered in different editions of Studies in the Scriptures to reflect the changes in emphasis from 1874 to 1914. In the 1901 edition of Volume 3, the length of the entrance passage is given as 3,416 inches, symbolizing 3,416 years from the above date, BC 1542. This calculation shows 1874 as marking the beginning of the period of trouble. In the 1923 edition of the same volume, the length of the passage is given as 3,457 inches, and 1874 is changed to 1915. The problem with setting dates, as every millennialist church has discovered to its cost, is that eventually the year arrives and the event doesn't. Now Jehovah's Witnesses admit not all that was expected to happen in 1914 did happen, but it did mark the end of the gentile times and was a year of special significance. Russell died in 1916 and was succeeded in 1918 after a very bitter fight by Joseph Franklin Judge Rutherford, 1869 to 1942. Part of the reason for the dimension was the posthumous publication of the 7th volume of Russell's Studies in the Scriptures, which overturns some of the previous prophecies. Around 4,000 members left the religion because of Rutherford, going off to become the Pastoral Bible Institute and the Layman's Home Missionary Movement, and maintaining Russell's teachings. This left the remaining church for many years, trying to deny any connection at all with Russell. Rutherford added greatly to the doctrinal writings of the church. He also coined the famous saying, "Millions now living will never die," still used today by Jehovah's Witnesses. This is a highly effective advertising slogan until one realizes that it was first used in the 1920s, although millions of people alive then are still alive today. The years, as always, are moving steadily on.
And nothing happened because, guys, the actual Jehovah's Witnesses made, both in his lifetime as well as successively to the death of Russell, there was other unfulfilled watchtower predictions that didn't manifest. We had in Russell's years 1878, 1881, 1914. Then after Russell's death, we had 1918, which coincided also with the publication of this book, which we are showing you on the screen. And then we had 1925. And they were later interpreted as a confirmation of the eschatological framework of the Bible study movement and Jehovah's Witnesses. Further expectations were held to the arrival of Armageddon in 1975, but yet again, nothing happened. English researcher George D. Chrysides has argued that although there have been some unrealized expectations, changes in watchtower chronology are attributable more to changes in the chronological schemes rather than to failed predictions. So they always try to invent or create some kind of excuse, but definitely this prediction didn't materialize. Of course, there is also the fact that the watchtower, amongst its prerogatives, says that they possess the true meaning of the Bible and the unique ability to discern the signs of Christ's second coming. So that is one of the other things. And always in regards to Jehovah's Witnesses, we show here the 7 messages of the church, which really gives us an idea what this church theologically is built on for those who are, of course, interested. We have St. Paul, of course, St. Paul of Tarsus, which is also regarded, even if he never met Jesus, as one of the apostles of Jesus, a figure which is, of course, important for all Christian people and all Christian communities. Then we have St. John the Apostle, and also John the Baptist, who is regarded as very important also because he's connected to the book of Revelation. Is connected to some of the most important writings of the Gospel of John, which is, of course, very important, and is the figure which is defined by Jesus himself in the Gospel of John as the one whom Jesus loved. So a very important figure. But then we have also other more controversial figures here. Arius. Now, this is really where things take a dark twist, because Arianism was one of those heresies within the early church, because they didn't really believe in Jesus being both a man and the Son of God, but literally to be simply a product that somehow descended the heavens and has a completely different, they have a completely different take, the Arians, and for that reason they were fought by the fathers of the church, and in ultimate instance they were forbidden after the Council of Nicaea, the historical Council of Nicaea in the year 325 after Christ. Constantine the Great formally decriminalized Christianity, but Arius theology was a prominent topic at the Council of Nicaea, and it became very much also a form of Christianity practiced by the Germanic people at one point. It is definitely called the Arian controversy, the fact that the Trinity is not viewed in the same way in the work of Arius, and so you don't have the same belief system, just as with the Jehovah's Witnesses. You have, the Jehovah's Witnesses believe that Jesus is God only begotten Son, and that his life began in heaven, not on earth. He's described as God's first creation and the exact representation of God, but is believed to be a separate entity and not part of a Trinity. In regards to the fact, they call it Jehovah. Jehovah is not even an old term. It's maybe a term that started to surface 8 centuries ago. The Jews never used it in this way, Jehovah, because it's picked up from the initials that they use from the, ineffable name of God that the rabbis are not even allowed to pronounce. So Jehovah, the way that basically, for Jehovah's Witnesses believe God is the supreme God, and Jesus Christ is his agent for reconciling sinners to God. But the Holy Spirit is not a spirit, but the active force of God on earth. Also, there is a thing that the Jehovah's Witnesses believe that everybody who is not a Jehovah's Witness is a slave, an evil slave.
Yeah.
So that is also something that, so there is this link with Arius, but there is not only a link with Arius. Here we see also another figure, Baldo. Baldo is very important also for a community that still to this day lives in the north of Italy. They were like a breakup from traditional Christianity and what we can define today as Catholicism, and they still exist as the Baldesi community, and they are a spiritual movement that arose in the Middle Ages. He was born in the year 1140 and died in 1205. His first name was Peter, and this Peter Baldo, that is regarded by many historians as the creator of the Valdesians, had a different interpretation of how Christianity was established by the apostles. It's almost like he made his own, thing, and it's quite curious to see him, in this context, within the context of the Jehovah's Witnesses, because to this day they are a important community still in northern Italy, where some of them survive as a community. And of course, they reject transubstantiation. They have different views of Christianity than traditional Christians. Then we have, amongst the 7 messengers that go and characterize the fathers, let's say, of the Jehovah's Witnesses church, Wycliffe, this other guy, who is a guy who inspired, though he was Catholic, this guy inspired very much the future Church of England. He was a Christian reformer. He used to be a Catholic priest, but his work is considered as very much inspirational. He became a dissident, let's say, from the Catholic priesthood during the 14th century, and his ideas are, let's say, considered as precursors to the Protestants. Then last and not least, we have Martin Luther, of course, which we all know for his role in the Reformation, and then we have Russell himself. So these are the messengers of the church, and they are depicted in this book, The Finished Mystery, that came out 2 years after the death of Russell, that was to complete the work of Russell's analysis. Here is the chronological chart of Revelation, the way they see it, from Ephesus, from Paul, John, Arius, Baldo, Wycliffe, Luther, and ultimately ending up with Russell, and all in a chronological chart of revelation. So this is their, let's say, theology, their view of things. The interesting thing is that, of course, they were, these teachings, maybe they were understood as too revealing for the new members of the Jehovah's Witnesses, and so they ended up being eliminated. Let's not forget that Charles Taze Russell was also considered to be a member of what we call Christian Zionism. Christian Zionism was a movement born within the 17th century puritanical England that we can consider even inspirational for the successive Jewish Zionism, because it was the English Zionists who wanted these English Christians to send back the Jews into the Holy Land in Palestine to then give birth, manifest the end times, and facilitate the return of Jesus. Though they didn't believe in what Judaism stands for, that is the basis of Christian Zionism. And apparently Charles Taze Russell was somebody like that. So we have a guy who definitely didn't believe in the same kind of Christianity, just like, the Mormons. They were a part of this movement within Christianity that was trying to go back to what they perceived to be real Christianity. But the interesting thing is that all these movements, the Seventh-day Adventists, the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witnesses, casually come into existence after Freemasonry starts to manifest and spread their teachings, which include also what they reclaim as being some form of primitive Christianity. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that then we have this link with the Freemasonry. I think that this testimony that I'm going to show you now from this guy gives you an idea also. This is the pyramid that the Jehovah's Witnesses in the end decided to remove, but listen to his testimony.
You know, when I was a Jehovah's Witness, I knew about this. I knew. Everybody, it was in the Proclaimer's book. Everybody knew. We just chalked it up to new light. In 1914, and the pyramids, we knew that the world was going to end. We knew that he said the world was going to end in 1914. We knew that the pyramid was part of the calculation that he used to come up with 1914. But of course, they did away with that teaching and they gave the new light. But that moment that I had of clarity, that moment that I just realized it was all baloney, all that stuff that I read about came back to me at that moment. Even like I would look it up on different literature that wasn't Jehovah's Witnesses, and I see, oh man, I would go to the library and I'd look at the stuff that they'd say, the bad things, every once in a while, and I would just chalk and push it aside. But at the end of the day, at that moment, what I knew deep down inside came out. And it was that moment where I was like, oh, this is it. When Deshauna told me, what, babe? It's like Big Brother. That moment I snapped out of it. So anyway, that's my short little ditto.
Okay.
Thanks God he snapped out of it. But the interesting thing here is that not everybody snaps out of it. A lot of people stay into these cults. And I wrote in this book, Confessions of an Illuminati, Volume 11, some specific words about deprogramming and about also Charles Taze Russell. Please read here about deprogramming, Chrissy.
Okay, deprogramming. The conflict between established cultures and new religions is an ancient one. It is parallel to and part of the conflict of generations, the parent-child struggle, youth's quest for identity through conversion, and the age's need to preserve meaning and purpose through established values. It is also part of the ongoing friction between established social political institutions and the new anti-Christian leftist ideals pushed by the Illuminati that are seeking to transform or even destroy certain religious institutions and society as we know it.
I suppose, before you continue, because it's very important, this, why were the Mormons, why were the Jehovah's Witnesses, why were other denominations created, especially in the 19th century? The reason is to diminish the sacrality of Jesus, the relation with God, inserting all these perversions. I mean, I'm not saying that their practices are sexually perverted, but perversions in the light of real faith, of real religion, of your own real relation with God, creating all these filters. They were never called the Jehovah's Witnesses during the life of Russell. They were calling the Russellites. But it's very important to understand, in my book here, I'm talking about deprogramming from a cult, because they are a cult. Please, Christy, continue.
Okay. In times past, society's intolerance of new religions was easily implemented. Early Christians were crucified. Later, members of Christian sects perceived as heretical were burned at the stake or tortured into submission. Puritans were harried out of England. Quakers, Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, Black Muslims, and many others have suffered different forms of religious persecution in America. It is nothing new, but in the 1970s, the controversial practice of deprogramming appeared on the scene, while the New Age movement was spreading its vicious anti-Christian tentacles all over the Western society with a variety of sects and gurus that, of course, never suffered any kind of religious persecution, especially in the United States, where they took and still take advantage of our First Amendment.
Yeah, because, I mean, they could really spread all kinds. I mean, anybody can create a religion. Then, of course, not everybody is followed and manifest as many followers as the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Seventh-day Adventists, or the Mormons, or other denominations. That's because these new Christian denominations in a way made use also of Masonic symbolism, of what we can consider stuff that is of mind control. After Radford, his successor was the one who then created the modality of knocking door by door, you know, and that led, of course, the Jehovah's Witnesses in reclaiming numbers that they had lost when there was their internal conflict that abandoned the original teachings of Russell. But please continue.
Where was I? Hold on. I think I was
here.
Okay, well, okay. Even if the same deprogramming concept could be honestly applied to older sectarians or religious and even Masonic beliefs, this method was used mostly in new religious movements that are often a secondary product of Freemasonry, like in the case of Charles Taz Russell, 1852 to 1916, the founder of the Jehovah's Witnesses, one of the most brainwashing Christian cults ever.
And I want to, in fact, invite you to get this book, volume 11 of my confessions, because mind control and a clever use of mind control techniques is what makes these cults successful. When it comes to the Jehovah's Witnesses, yes, we all know them, especially because of their knocking door by door.
Our Bible and Tract Society, this is the Jehovah's Witnesses organization. What you have to understand is the Watchtower is basically a publication machine. They have a small group of people that are ultimately in charge, and these people are considered spiritual leaders for the Jehovah's Witness people. What they call it is the faithful and discreet slave. And it means that they are the one who is doing the work of God on earth, and they're claiming to speak from God. They are the ones that make those magazines say awake, and they bring them to your door. They produce all the Jehovah's Witness material. Jehovah's Witnesses are not supposed to read material that doesn't come from them that's about God or about religion. That's a mind control technique that their organization uses. Whereas, like in our church, our pastor encouraged everyone to read the Quran because so that they could better witness to Muslims. I mean, knowing you're not going to be convinced by anything in it, but go for it.
Whatever. In any case, now I'm going to show something very interesting. I'm going to show you Charles Russell himself. Because we have a video testimony of how he presented scriptures and how Charles Taze Russell made extensive use not only of Masonic symbolism that we saw portrayed on this monument next to his tomb, but also in his actual gestures, because in the video that I'm about to show you, you will notice for those who have familiarity, especially with the Duncan Masonic ritual, which, by the way, was published and was made public at the time Russell was alive. So he could have learned certain things without joining Freemasonry, because at one point he said, I am a free and accepted Mason, but not one in the way you imagine. I'm not a practicing Freemason. But why saying that anyway? Remember these images that I'm showing you that are of specific passages within the York Rite. Remember them because you're going to see them now in the actual, one of the very rare videos of Russell himself. Check out the way he moves, the way he really ostensibly shows he knows the Masonic symbolic language.
The remainder of Part Third is deeply interesting. The teaching, death, and resurrection of Jesus. Truly, never man spake like this man. He yet speaks to us all. Come unto our heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Yea, and the hour is coming when all shall be privileged to hear his blessed message. All the blind eyes shall be opened, and all the mentally deaf ears shall be unstopped. Wear your peace pin. Show it to your friends. Tell them what it means. Invite them to see this drama. All are welcome. Ask why we do not lift strings. Nowhere in the Bible are we authorized to solicit money in God's name.
Yeah, I like that. Nowhere in the Bible you're allowed to solicit money in God's name. Do the Jehovah's Witnesses solicit money? Because I don't know how they can bring forward their cattle without taking money from their faithful. Russell was definitely a unique kind of individual, very charismatic. His successor, Radford, equally. When instead then the guy who came after them was the guy who started that door-to-door practice. He was instead somebody who was a little bit more of an administrative guy who had, though, very much acquaintance with the mind control techniques. In any case, I want to show you now the secrets that link Jehovah's Witnesses and Freemasonry. So get ready, prepare yourself, prepare your popcorn. Here we are with the 5 shocking Masonic secrets behind Jehovah's Witnesses.
The religion you thought was Bible-based had roots in something far more secretive. Symbols of the occult, hidden ties to Freemasonry, and a founder buried beneath a pyramid. In this video, we expose 5 shocking Masonic connections buried deep in the origins of Jehovah's Witnesses, connections that the Watchtower has tried to erase from memory. From the mysterious use of the cross and crown, to phrases used only in Masonic lodges, and even official documents that raise more questions than answers. We're not using rumors. We're using their own literature, Russell's original sermons, and historical records they hope you never read. So whether you're a curious outsider, a doubting witness, or someone who walked away, this video will show you a side of the Watchtower you were never meant to see. Like, comment, and subscribe if you're ready to uncover what's been hidden in plain sight. The story begins in the late 1800s, a time when spiritualism, secret societies, and apocalyptic movements were exploding across Europe and North America. Freemasonry was at its peak influence, not just in politics and architecture, but in religion, philosophy, and publishing. And right in the middle of that landscape, a man named Charles Taze Russell founded what would become the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, the organization behind Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, we're not here to make wild accusations, but we are going to look at a few historical details that simply can't be ignored. For example, Russell's fascination with the Great Pyramid of Giza, which he called God's Stone Witness, and his use of Masonic-style imagery, including the infamous cross and crown symbol. He was even buried near a pyramid monument erected by the Watchtower itself. Coincidence? Maybe. But the deeper you look, the harder it is to explain these patterns away. You'll also hear about a speech Russell gave in 1913, where he said the words, "I am a free and accepted Mason." He immediately clarified that he didn't mean it literally, but then continued using language that only someone familiar with Masonic teachings would understand. Again, we're not saying he was a Freemason. But these overlaps raise an uncomfortable question. How much of the Watchtower's foundation was influenced by secret ideologies hiding in plain sight? 1. The Pyramid at Russell's Grave. In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, not far from where the Watchtower movement began, lies the grave of Charles Taze Russell. But what stands out isn't just the tombstone. It's a massive stone pyramid nearby, built and funded by the Watchtower Society itself. On it, you'll find an engraved emblem, the cross and crown, a symbol historically linked to the Knights Templar and prominently used in Freemasonic imagery. For a religion that now condemns pagan symbols, this monument raises a massive red flag. The organization has since distanced itself from the pyramid, claiming it no longer represents their beliefs. But they never explained why they erected it in the first place. Why would a Bible-based Christian group build a Masonic-style pyramid over their founder's resting place? And why was Russell so obsessed with pyramidology, even calling the Great Pyramid of Giza God's Stone Witness? He believed it contained divine measurements and timelines that confirmed Bible prophecy, ideas that were also popular among occultists and esoteric societies at the time. Again, we're not saying Russell was a Freemason, but the pyramid, the symbols, and the teachings speak for themselves. And if this is how the foundation was laid, what else is hidden beneath the surface? 2. The cross and crown symbol. Long before the Watchtower banned the cross, it proudly displayed a striking emblem on its publications, a cross inside a crown. This symbol wasn't just decorative, it was central to the identity of the early movement. The Zion's Watchtower magazine, early books, and even Russell's personal lapel pins carried the cross and crown. But here's where it gets strange. This exact image is also one of the most recognizable symbols in Freemasonry, particularly within the York Rite and the Knights Templar. The Watchtower later removed the symbol entirely and condemned all use of the cross. But they've never explained why their foundational years were so full of Masonic-style iconography. Was it just a coincidence? Or was Russell borrowing imagery from a system he publicly denied being part of?
Or he was possibly stealing the Masonic symbols and adapting them to amplify his mind control. Please read this paragraph, Christy, about the name Jehovah's Witnesses and what happened after the successor of Russell died.
The name Jehovah's Witnesses was adapted in 1931. Rutherford was succeeded in 1942 by Nathan Homer Knorr, 1905 to 1977, the former manager of the printing works. Although, unlike his predecessors, Knorr was not a charismatic preacher. He was a tremendous administrator, responsible for the more systematic door-to-door evangelism which has resulted in the growth of the religion over the last few decades. He set up a training school for Jehovah's Witnesses missionaries and was also responsible for initiating the movement's own New World translations of the Bible, largely translated by Frederick Franz 1893, who became president after Knorr's death. The New World Translation is often worded in such a way as to give scriptural support to Jehovah's Witnesses' doctrines. For example, John 1:1 reads, "And the Word was a God." Despite Jehovah's Witnesses' claims to the contrary, most respected Bible scholars, including many of the scholars whom they themselves have quoted as supporting the New World Translation, regard it as a poor translation.
Please.
By the time of Knorr's death, the organization's governing body had become much more powerful, taking power away from the president. After the world didn't come to an end in 1975, a large number of members, including some senior leaders, left the church. Former members who have since written books about the church describe it as an authoritarian, often uncaring. A recurrent theme is the lack of compassion and support shown to any witnesses with problems, whether spiritual, emotional, or financial. On the second coming, the official position of the church now is to quote Jehovah's warning that no one knows when he will return. When someone goes beyond what Jesus said, there will be false or inaccurate predictions. They now admit that they made a mistake in setting the date for 1914, 1925, or 1975. The wrong conclusions were due not to malice or to unfaithfulness to Christ, but to a fervent desire to realize the fulfillment of God's promises in their own time. This does not, however, mean any change of emphasis for Jehovah's Witnesses.
Thank you very much. And now I want to instead to cite The Occult Theocracy by Edith Starr Miller, which of course was published over 100 years ago, I think. And so I think that that's why they didn't really call them yet Jehovah's Witnesses, but the Russellites. That's how the
Russellites. Yeah,
yes,
Russellites.
Because it says something interesting here in the first paragraph.
Okay. The Russellites. The International Bible Student Movement was founded by Charles Taze Russell with the object chiefly of attracting the lower middle class intelligentsia of Christian communities, such as certain clerical workers, teachers, servants, and persons not accessible to direct forms of propaganda. In America, the movement had great influence among the Negro element. In 1879, Russell founded the Watchtower, of which he was the sole editor. Keep going.
Yeah. Where are you here? Okay. The Russellite teaching, drawing its own arbitrary conclusion and proclaiming then as final prophecies to prove from biblical sources that all Christian churches are evil and corrupt, aside from itself. Edith Starr Miller wrote this and published it in 1933. So this was just in the early days when they just changed their name. So probably she didn't adopt the use of Jehovah's Witnesses, calling it instead the Russellites and or the International Bible Students. And we continue with our show today based on the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Deeply familiar with. And here's something most people miss. The cross and crown isn't just about design, it carries a message. In Masonic circles, it represents suffering, the cross, followed by glory, the crown, and spiritual elevation through secret knowledge. Sound familiar? In the early Watchtower teachings, Russell echoed the same theme. Endure now, reign later, but only through loyalty to the organization.
Now, the interesting thing is that recently, the actual Chinese Communist Party has persecuted and has put on their black book in their index of forbidden religious organization, the Jehovah's Witnesses, because they are related, they say they are related to Freemasonry. Now, we said there's no evidence Russell was a Freemason. There is definitely not the kind of evidence we saw last week when we talk about the Mormons. But definitely there is a constant use of Masonic terminology, and this was also confirmed by a Jesuit agent called Massimo Introvigne, who published recently an article on Bitter Winter about the Jehovah's Witnesses and Freemasonry and accusation in China and the historical record. Here he actually says that, in fact, Russell was occasionally critical of Freemasonry, as evidenced by an article he published on the Bible student magazines The Watchtower. But at the same time, there are, however, other texts which show Russell's familiarity with the Masonic language in the very first sermon collected in the posthumous book, Pastor Russell's Sermons. Please read, Christine.
Where?
From here.
Oh, the founder of the Bible student, having mentioned secret societies in general and the blood-curdling Masonic oaths in particular, states that it is not part of my mission to attack any of these orders, nor to inveigh against their procedures. I merely refer to them here. I merely call your attention to the fact that this is a common method amongst men, which evidently has the sanction of many, because I wish to draw your attention on the fact that the mighty God himself is the founder of a secret society. Moreover, while there are certain correspondences between the human secret orders and the one of divine origin, we shall find, as we should expect, that the latter is every way superior to all others.
Now, the secret societies that he's mentioning is the Order of Melchizedek, which somehow he says is behind Christianity. In fact, the sermon Russell goes on to explain that Urban established an Order of Melchizedek priesthood, of which he and later Jesus Christ became subsequently a Grand Master. So almost like, bringing this grandmastership all the way down to himself. And he says that this Abrahamic and Christian order, he stated, is of divine origin and infinitely superior to all the orders established by humans, such as Freemasonry. So he kind of puts himself superior to Freemason. And here you can also read this passage.
And as in some secret societies, there are different steps or grades. For instance, all Masons are familiar with the secrets pertaining to the first degree, yet not all Masons are familiar with the secrets, etc., pertaining to the 32nd degree. So in God's secret order, there are first principles of the doctrines of Christ, which must be known to all who belong to the order, and are also deep things of God, which may be known only to those who have been made advancement.
So there is a certain elitism here that is showed by Russell.
Yeah.
It's not like the truth should set us free and the truth should be open to every human being. I hope that today, of course, we have managed somehow to bring some clarity.
The overlap in meaning is hard to ignore. 3. Russell's statement, I am a free and accepted Mason. In 1913, during a lecture in California, Charles Taze Russell made a statement that still echoes in XJW forums today, I am a free and accepted Mason. He quickly followed it by saying, not in the literal sense, but continued using terms and phrases directly associated with Masonic teachings. For example, he spoke of greater light, mysteries being revealed, and the temple class, language that resonates more with secret societies than with biblical exposition. Now, defenders of the Watchtower say Russell was simply being metaphorical, drawing spiritual parallels. But even if that's true, the choice of words and timing are strange. At the time, Freemasonry was widely known and respected in certain intellectual circles, but controversial in religious ones. Why would a religious leader feel comfortable publicly aligning himself, even symbolically, with such an organization? And here's where it gets deeper. Free and accepted Mason isn't just a generic phrase. It's a formal title used by actual Masonic lodges around the world. Russell didn't say, I appreciate some Masonic ideas. He used their own terminology at the beginning of a Bible lecture. Was he revealing something more than he intended? Or was it just another coincidence in a long list of accidental connections? 4. Pyramidology and divine measurements. Charles Taze Russell didn't just believe in the Bible. He believed the Great Pyramid of Giza was inspired by God. In fact, he called it God's stone witness, claiming that its internal passageways and angles held hidden prophetic timelines that confirmed biblical chronology. He even taught that measuring the inner chambers of the pyramid could reveal the exact dates for Christ's return and the end of the world. This doctrine wasn't a minor side belief, it was a core teaching for years. Diagrams of the pyramid were included in Watchtower publications, and entire books were written about its supposed divine origin. The problem. These ideas didn't come from the Bible. They came from 19th century occultism, popular among Freemasons, Theosophists, and mystics who believed ancient structures held secret knowledge from higher beings.
So he was a product of his age, a product of the 19th century, in which, of course, a man of his religious and intellectual stature would be involved somehow with Freemasonry, or at least would be studying the teaching of Freemasonry and adopting him for his own way of interpreting Christianity, which led to the creation of a religion which today we know as Jehovah's Witnesses, but wasn't known as Jehovah's Witnesses in the days of Russell, that we said was simply promoting a Bible study group that applied unorthodox ways of interpretation, including, of course, like we just heard, the importance and the relevance of the pyramid in in even, you know, interpreting the Bible, which is totally unheard of, especially because Moses fought against the Pharaoh. Moses fought against the occultists and magicians of ancient Egypt, demonstrating the power of God. And then when they saw that they were defeated, some of them unfortunately ended up being part of the Erev Rav, which still persecutes to this day the Jewish people. Somebody earlier said, what do I think of the Torah? The answer would take probably a whole broadcast. But we can definitely say that the Sinaitic laws are one thing, and what the Zionism and what we could call Sabbatean Zionism these days is manifesting in Israel is very distant from the Sinaitic laws. Thank you so much for following us today. If you want to encourage us to move further with other episodes on similar topics, please write to us. Let us know if you enjoyed this show.
Or you can just comment.
And then, of course, share it on your social media, share it social networks of choice. And then we will also like to have a minimum of sponsorship so we can at least cover the expenses. This month, the electric bill here in Southern California has gone up 13%. That's
I don't know why they're doing that. And then like gas is going up too.
Gasoline also going up because yesterday there was a bomb that blow up a refinery, and we know that refineries are not very common anymore here in California. They are leaving the state of California. So thank you so much for following us. But remember, we need your support, and even purchasing our books is another option. But if you neither do the purchasing of the book or the sponsorship, we will be unfortunately forced to pause this project and maybe carry it on later on. Carrying it on later on, it's a bit of a conflict of words. In any case, me and Christy want to thank also the sponsors of today.
Malgorzata Minta.
And God bless you all.
Malgorzata Minta.
Yeah.
I always say her name wrong. Malgorzata. Malgorzata.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. And we will see you, hopefully, if God wants, next week, or maybe in the future when people will be ready for more episodes of the Leo Zagami Show. Thank you.
In that time, our world has taken so many steps in the wrong direction. Negative utopia, science, technology, social organization, dehumanization. In the negative utopia, science, technology, social organization.
remember, if you want to have a great meal, the Zagami Family Cookbook, Authentic Italian Cooking, you can find it on Amazon. Christy wrote this book. It's filled with recipes, with great pictures of these recipes. They are described in a way that even a guy who doesn't know how to cook will make the most incredible meal. Trust me, you can transform your kitchen in a 5-star Italian restaurant with the Zagami Family Cookbook. See you next week, hopefully.
The negative utopia, science, technology, social organization, dehumanization. Technology, social organization.